Welcome to another GCS Connect inclusion. Sorry that we're running a few minutes late. We had a few technical issues. Our saviour of digital content marketing manager, Betty, is away on vacation, and so obviously everything just goes pear-shaped on that side. But let's bring in our guest today, who is a writer, speaker, and a motivational coach around the religion aspects of inclusion. Hira, hi.
Hi, Erin. How are you? Good to be back again.
I was going to say, I've just explained to our audience that we had a few technical issues, but we're up and running now. So it's always the way that when somebody goes on vacation that normally runs the whole studio element, it just goes pear-shaped.
No
So how are
problem at all.
you?
I'm good. Thank you. Not too
Good.
bad.
What I'd like you to do, if it's all right, is could you give us a bit of an introduction about who you are and why we're talking today?
All right. So who am I? I am a leadership development specialist. I have started owning that title now. Given my imposter syndrome, I used to be hesitant about calling myself a specialist. But yes, that's what I am. I do leadership and career coaching. I'm also an executive career coach, certified through ICF and ANLP. And I'm a writer. I've written 2 books, popular books.
Wow.
I always say, as I like to believe, Her Way to the Top and Her Allies. And I'm very passionate about diversity, inclusion, and I speak a lot about sexism, racism, and Islamophobia. Primarily because I'm an Asian brown Muslim woman myself. So these are the topics I can freely speak about because I can relate to them.
Fantastic. And what inspired you to write books? I mean, that must have taken up a hell of a lot of your time to get involved in all of that.
It does take a lot of time, yes. And I think what inspired was my experience working in different countries, because I'm originally from Pakistan and I moved to Dubai and then I moved to London, and I saw very similar experiences in terms of what women were experiencing across the globe, and also people from different marginalized groups. And I think that is what inspired me to write about it, because I realized that a lot of challenges across the globe are very common.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that we're going to obviously explore is you're an expert in is the religion elements of DE&I, and it's something that I hold quite dear because I think that people are too scared to talk about it. What's your views on this?
Yeah, so I don't think so. I'm an expert.
You're more of an expert than I am,
yeah.
so.
But I did have an article recently published in the Harvard Business Review.
Oh, says the person that's not an expert.
So, well, thank you for saying that. But honestly, I don't feel I'm the expert in religion. But yes, I do feel that religion is something which we often don't talk about, particularly at work. Organizations are doing a lot in the space of diversity inclusion, but not so much in the space of religion. And that's primarily because I think people are anxious, just as they're anxious to talk about politics. People think it's going to be divisive. People think it's going to generate a lot of heat. They won't be able to see people eye to eye, so they completely avoid the topic altogether. And that is really hindering the progress of a lot of practicing people, not just Muslim women and Muslim men, but people of different faiths who want to bring religion to the workplace, right? Because it's part of their identity. They relate to it. And if they want to, yeah, sorry, no, you go ahead.
No. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think that there is a fear issue. And what I'm trying to do with regards to like broadcasts like this is to break down that fear, because we as individuals should be able to talk about everything and anything and have our opinions, our views blessed by other people and accepted. Doesn't mean whether we're right or wrong, but we should be able to engage in these sort of conversations. What made you go down this whole route of going down this coaching and writing books around religion? What did you have any experiences yourself in life about this?
Yes, so I think specifically when I started, I was obviously talking about sexism And I talk a lot about women in leadership and the challenges women experience at workplace. And then I started exploring the concept of intersectionality, women with multiple identities. And I'm an intersectional woman myself. I'm an Asian, brown, immigrant, Muslim woman. So that's a lot of different identities that I represent. And each identity has its own unique set of challenges, which workplaces often ignore because they feel that, okay, if you're a woman, you probably have the same challenges. So we're going to offer the same support to everyone. And that's not going to be helpful at all, because your challenges, for example, as a Black woman or a brown woman or a trans woman, a woman of faith, a Jewish woman, a Muslim woman, are going to be very different from the rest of the people. And you will have certain challenges with respect to the identity that you represent that are very specific to you. Some of these challenges might be very common to women across the globe, but some of these challenges are very unique. So organizations need to understand this. And I often saw this when I was talking about diversity inclusion. Faith always took a backseat. And if I talk about Muslim women, I saw that there was a lot of misconception. Media had, especially the faith stereotyping, which media has done over the past few years, has resulted in people being scared and having all sorts of assumptions, which I thought was very important to clarify and, just discuss this.
So, in the work that you've been doing, just talk to us about some of the common challenges that are faced by some who practice a religion. Have you had some examples that you can talk to us about?
Yes. So, for example, let me start with something basic, right? I'll talk about food. So, a lot of, for example, Jews and Muslims and Hindus and lots of other faiths do not have certain types of food. They will only have vegetarian, or they will only have halal food. They will only have kosher food. They will avoid pork. Some of them will not drink, either due to religious reasons or cultural reasons or their own preferences. And these things are often not taken into account. People would be wearing a hijab, and different faiths have different requirements. People would be following that. And I think a lot of people do not understand, especially if I'm talking about Muslim women, for example. They need, they need to have their prayers 5 times a day, and organizations do not have any space. And not just Muslim women, every religion, people do need some time out during the day to have a private sanctuary where they can go and relax and, worship to whoever they believe in. And these kind of spaces are not available at work. And I think it's about time that organizations should start considering that when you don't have this, right? So, for example, if I have to have my prayers 5 times a day and there's no proper space allocated to it, then where will I go and pray? Being a woman, it's very hard for me. Even being a man, irrespective of your gender, because you just can't stand in front of everybody. You need a private, exclusive space. In terms of socializing and networking, if I don't drink alcohol, if I don't eat pork, if I don't eat, if I only eat halal food or kosher or specific type of food, then that means that I will feel left out in most of the social gatherings where, people like to interact in the evening at happy hours or, doing drinking hours. And that's the whole concept of socializing. So things like that, I think we need to be more aware, and we need to understand that our way of looking at things is not the only way. There are people following different, beliefs, different faiths. They have their own preferences. And sometimes it's not just to do with faith. People who do not follow any faith might have their own preferences too. So, it's not just about people who are following a specific religion. It's about people with faith or no faith. You just have to look out and see what are the different things which you can offer in the organization to make these people psychologically safe, to make these people belong at the workspace that you're in.
I agree. And do you think that there's also a thought process about someone's religious articles? And I'm talking about things like clothing, about even things like the cross. I remember some time ago, British Airways had an issue with regards to a Catholic wearing a cross on the outside of their uniform. And do you think that causes issues when there is a symbolism of someone's religion when they're at an interview, or What's your take?
Yes. Oh, yes, there's absolutely a lot of assumptions, especially if you are a visible person of faith. So, if you're a Jewish person wearing something which denotes that you're a Jew, or if you're a Muslim woman or a man who has a beard, you're wearing hijab. Hijab bias is one of the biggest bias, and it's research has evidence that hijabi women particularly find it very difficult to find work. So when you are visibly a person of faith, and if you're wearing a cross, or if somebody wants to keep a Ganesh statue on their table, or anything related to their faith, then of course people obviously form opinions, and I think a lot of that has to do with misconception. If a person is practicing their faith in their own space and it's not bothering them in any way, then I think there should be more inclusion towards that. We automatically assume that if it's a person, a practicing person, a person of faith, then we need to be scared of that person. And I think that's the kind of conversations we need to have at the workplace. That's the kind of misconceptions we need to, all these myths, these stereotypical assumptions we have, these need to be tackled at the workplace.
And what's been any sort of like counsel that you've given somebody that's faced maybe discrimination because of the appearance of their religion from an outside perspective? And what I mean by that is somebody turns up for an interview, or they're going through a promotion criteria within their organization, but clearly they practice religion because of something that they wear or something that they believe in. Have you given any coaching around this, and what advice could you give to people?
So the best advice would be to go over my article in Harvard Business Review. I mean, that is specifically to do with Muslim women, but honestly, the advice is equally relevant to all people of faith. I think you just need to make sure that you're not making any assumptions. If there are any myths or stereotypes attached to a particular faith, whether it's Islam or other religions, I think you need to address that, and you need to make sure that people are felt included. There's no discrimination in the recruitment, in the appraisal, in the way these people are treated, because clearly people are biased. And there is a negative bias towards people of faith, people who are practicing Muslims or practicing Jews or any other faith for that matter. I'm talking about all faiths. So I think we need to address that bias. We need to make sure that we are having these conversations. I mean, religion is a part of a person's identity. And if you're not able to bring that part of identity to work, then how can you expect that person to be authentic? How can you expect that person to truly belong? So as long as that thing, whatever that person is practicing, is not bothering anyone, I mean, offering like a sanctuary or a prayer room, these are small things which will not really cost a lot in terms of budget, but it's going to give so much peace of mind to people who are practicing and need that safe space. And even when you're going through recruitment or appraisals, or, because especially I'm talking about women of faith who look Muslims, Muslim women I'm talking about in particular right now, wearing a hijab. There is a lot of hijab bias. They do not get promoted because they do not look like leaders. Leaders are supposed to are seen in a certain way. So I think we need to and the only reason we will overcome these biases by having these conversations and telling people that leaders are not supposed to look in a certain way. Just because you have seen people from a specific gender or faith or ethnicity in the leadership role, that doesn't mean that's going to be the standard. So, broaden, you have to broaden your outlook and see what's there beyond.
Do you think that there is also an issue where maybe somebody isn't demonstrated? I practice Buddhism, okay, so that's something dear to me, but you would not necessarily tell that by anything that I don't wear or I do wear or anything like that. So is there a way that we can engage in conversation during sort of like interview processes or career reviews that is very much inclusive, so you're not being biased either way?
Yes. So I think you need to have especially in terms of, I think religious literacy is really important. If you could have guest speakers, or if you could invite people, particularly if you have senior people, for example, or somebody who is already in the organization, who is a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Muslim or a Jew, they could come and talk about their religion and about their faith on specific days. You could have cultural awareness days, you could have faith awareness days, and people could ask relevant questions. So I think these are all important, especially when you are when you are going through the process of recruitment. I think it's important to look at what you're advertising. Are you advertising the same type of people who look the same way, dress the same way? And if that's the case, then obviously you are discouraging people who are from a specific faith. So I think every process in the organization needs to be deliberately, I'm not using the word cleansed, but reviewed, to see that there are no biases involved, whether it's religious bias, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, whatever it is. I think and I think if I talk about myself, I think you just need to ask yourself, am I making any assumptions on the basis of a person's gender, ethnicity, faith, or race? Because very often I am. Very often when I look at another person, I am making assumptions. Every day we all are. And to say that we are not biased is refuting science. We all are biased, but we just have to actively question our bias and make sure we distance ourselves from it.
Is it biased, or is it because one of the 4 factors of being a human being is very much about being tribal? And what I mean tribal is that we're naturally drawn to people, in whether it's a culture thing. Correct. Well, people that are like me, and they've got the same values or the same beliefs as I have. And I think that this is something that individuals need to understand out there, is that, just because you can be tribal in your own social element, there's nothing wrong with regards to who you mix with. I love people for the individuality of who they are, not because of a skin color, their creed, their beliefs, or anything along those lines. But how do people come away from that tribal thought process, and the difference between that and biased? Does that make sense?
Yes. So see, the thing is, Aaron, so what you're talking about is actually, again, relatability bias. So if you are able to relate to the person, then you will be attracted to the person. If you're not able to relate to the person, then you will not hire that person, promote the person, work with that person. There's also confirmation bias, when people would like to, sometimes there's certain stereotypes attached with specific marginalized groups, and people are actively looking for information that is going to confirm their bias of that particular group. So again, confirmation bias, relative, there are 99 biases, to be honest. We can't discuss all of them, but yes, what I'm saying is, it is natural to be attracted to people who are like you. But if you want to grow, because we are in increasingly inclusive world, where we are working with people from different parts of the world, and if you want to have that sustainable collaborative advantage, which I don't call it, actually it's a term which has been used by another professor I quoted in my book, and they say that if you're a person who is able to get along with people from diverse backgrounds, then you're a catch for the organization, because people would want to work with you. And again, just like you try out different cuisines, you're interested in visiting different countries. Why don't you just have a holiday in your own country, right? Why don't you just have food in your own food? Why do you try out different cuisines? Why do you go out to different countries? So when you're doing that, when you're open to doing that, then also be open to learning about those people. How is it that I hate the smell of Indian food, or I will have biases towards Asian people and Black people and hate the food they're eating, but yet at the restaurant, I would be very comfortable about eating the same cuisine, because, I'll be like, oh yeah, this is great. This is great for my taste buds. So I think it's just a matter of perspective, where you need to open up and interact with more people, because the more people you interact with who are not like you, the more well-informed you will be about the world and the kind of people that live in it. Otherwise, you will never know anything outside your own circle.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's this old thing as well about one of the favorite holiday destinations for British people is Spain. But you know, you tend to go over there, and you'll find that all of the white British people are sat there eating their English breakfasts in an English pub in Spain. Don't understand it. Don't understand it. I think, you know, people need to embrace and they need to learn, and this is how we as a society are going to change as well.
Yeah.
Earlier
Exactly.
on,
And again, sorry, Aaron, I just wanted
no,
to
no,
say
go
very
ahead.
one quick thing. I mean, again, cuisines and the way you dress, that's a very personal choice. I'm not going to dictate that, but that is an example I used. But again, meeting with people is not going to cost you anything. People who are not like you, fine, you can have your own personal preferences in terms of what you eat, in terms of what you wear. But in terms of interaction, you could still be open about meeting people from different diverse backgrounds so that you're able to learn more about different, religions, ethnicities, and backgrounds.
I totally agree. And I, as part of my team, I have everybody from Polish nationalities, German nationalities, Indian backgrounds, American, English, Irish, you name it, that they're all part of my team. And I, as an individual, have felt that I have grown because of the involvement that I have with all of this team dynamics that I've actually got within my own organization. And I feel quite rich because of that as well. Earlier on, you mentioned about creating safe spaces. I don't want to go on to this too much, but what advice would you give a tech business? There's a lot of tech startup organizations. Money is obviously quite tight, and space is quite tight as well. And with regards to everybody working online, how do organizations, in your opinion, give safe spaces in that type of setup?
So see, if I talk about particularly, for example, having your prayers, right, 5 times a day. Now that
Hmm.
doesn't require extensive space. You just need, a very small space where you can, if space is an issue, that's understandable. But I think you could still use meeting rooms and have designated times and tell people that, for example, if there are a lot of Muslim people or people from different faith who need to use the prayer rooms, then you could create an inclusive schedule and say that this is the time when the meeting room is going to be used for the prayers or whatsoever. So I think that way, even if you do not have an exclusive space, if you can't afford to build an exclusive space for such things, you can use existing spaces, but you could also create a schedule, and you can create an inclusive schedule where we tell people that, this is time between 1 to 1:30. Anybody who wants to meditate, pray, can use the room. And or between, so I think it's just about being creative, and if you want, you really can do it in lots of different ways. It doesn't cost you a lot, honestly. You just need to be aware, you just need to make an effort, and things are very much possible even in tight budgets or even in tight schedules. And
Yeah.
online, I think it's just when you're keeping a meeting, I think usually online it's more flexible because there's no specific time. But Friday, for example, is an important time for a lot of Muslim people who go out for prayers at a specific hour. They go out to the mosque. So I think these are things which will only be known if you take interest and if you create awareness. And once you know them, then it's easier to introduce measures which can address all these different needs.
Fantastic. And one controversial point, if you don't mind me asking this as well, a lot of people would say it's unfair that those that don't practice a religion get to and not have the time out of the working day as those that do like to pray or need to pray as part of their culture and their heritage as well. Have you got a thought on that at all?
So see, when I talked about in my Harvard article, I talk about a sanctuary where anybody, person of every and no faith can visit. So when you are, yes, Muslims have this requirement to go out, and again, it's not for like hours and hours. It'd probably be 10 to 15 minutes at the most. So even if it is 10 minutes, and who's to say that you can't go and have that little time out and or meditate or do something else, even if it's not related to faith. You could do whatever you want. So I think the whataboutism is what's dangerous, because every individual is going to have would you say the same, for example, when you have women who are pregnant or feeding babies, right? So you will have lactation rooms for them. So will people start arguing, oh, why are you having rooms for them? Why not for us? So it's always the whataboutism, I feel, comes when we're talking about more sensitive topics such as religion. I mean, for example, you have disability access, right? Very rightly so. Will you start arguing about that? That, oh my God, why is there a separate room for that? Why is so? I think what I'm trying to say is that there is no end to it. If I start
Agreed.
complaining about things that I don't have access to, then I could actually go on and on, right? I mean, I could complain about why I can go out in the evening and have a drink, right? Because it's not fair. You go out and have drink and you enjoy, you make all important decisions. I can't drink. So again, like I said, there's certain things which you will be able to do, and there's certain things which you can't do. And I think the more we are accepting towards each other's preferences and habits and lifestyles, the better it's going to be for all of us. Because whataboutism doesn't lead to anything. It's just like a Russian Olympics. Who has it the hardest? Let's see, let's compete. And I think that doesn't really help when we're talking about inclusion and belonging.
I agree, and that's a perfect note to end our conversation today. So, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. Really interesting conversation. Love the topics. Congratulations on the books, and also the latest piece that's been featured as well. So, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you so much for having this conversation, because I don't think so a lot of workplaces have these sort of conversations. So I really welcome it. Thank you so much for inviting me.